I'm going to make for myself today the sunflowers espadrilles, following exactly the same technique that I used to make my lemons espadrilles. So I've got my soles here. So these are size 38, which is a 5. When you get your soles, you'll see, whoops, you need to undo this bit down here. Just trim that tie there. So there are my soles. You can see that they have a definite sort of left and right foot there where your insole is in the middle. They've got the size printed on the bottom as well. So set those down just for the second. And then if you open up your flap on the top of the packet there, you'll see your instructions, or your pattern rather. So when you open this up, you have your pattern inside for cutting your heel and your upper. So this is the toe area, this is the bit that curves around the heel. You've got this area here which you leave open to turn through, and an area there which you leave open to turn through. I'll come back to this in a minute, but just to let you know that these patterns do not include seam allowance. So what you want to do is trace off your size and then add your seam allowance. So I'll come back to that in a sec. But that is your pattern that comes with your espadrilles. So in the kit, we have the fabric for the uppers, the fabric for the lining, a piece of fabric to make a drawstring bag. I've added a piece of foam. This is to reinforce the heel. I just found when I made my first pair, I didn't reinforce the heel and they did crush a bit as I was walking. And then also for the bag, we've got some Panama fabric and some Bonder web to create a pretty applique on the front. Interfacing for the shoes themselves, thread for hand stitching and finishing the details, and then we've also got this, which is Diego's special espadrille thread. So we're going to be hand stitching our uppers to our soles in a minute. 3 meters of cotton webbing, and then a really nice sharp yarn needle and needle grabbers. So that's everything that I include, and that's everything that you need to make both your pair of shoes and your matching bag. What we'll make is a lovely dust bag here with an applique on the front depicting your espadrilles. And then to go, obviously, inside them, you've got your espadrilles themselves. I put a tab at the back which you can attach a tie to that can go around your ankle. You've got your reinforced heel there. These bits here are hand stitched, and then you've got your thread for your hand stitching, and the uppers just get attached to your soles. So that's the finished product that we're going to work on today. I'm going to take you through very easily, step by step. There's nothing too tricky. You're going to need, in addition to everything that you get in the kit, you're going to need your sewing machine, some pins or clips, your ironing board, a chalk or a pen for marking out things. So just really your normal sewing kit, some scissors, of course. So let's get started. I'll take you through step by step, first of all, on how to make the shoes. Let's start by working on the pattern. So you've got your guide here, 36, 38, or 36 to 37, 38 to 39, 40 to 41, 42 to 43, and 44 to 45. So each line spans across 2 sizes for the uppers. I'm making a 38, so I'm going to trace the 38 to 39 size. So what I actually would suggest that you do at this point is just stick your pattern paper down, grab some tracing paper or a piece of A4 paper or some greaseproof paper, pop that over the top there and just trace off your size that you are going to make. If it helps, you can put a highlighter across there first. Once you've done that, so this is one, here's one I made earlier. So once you've traced off your size, you can see that I've traced off the size 37, 38, or 38, 39 rather. Okay, and then I also put this grain line on here. I put the marks for the notches here for where you're going to leave it open to bag it out. And I just wrote on outside, inside, because once you cut out your fabric, it's very difficult to remember. And there is a slight difference. It's difficult to remember which is the inside and which is the outside. So I traced that off, and then I added a 1 centimetre seam allowance all the way around. So you first of all need to do that. Trace off your pattern and then add a 1 centimetre seam allowance. If you want to, you can cut it out of this paper. It's just that I think with all these different lines it can get confusing, so personally I found it easier to sort of trace it off and then add my seam allowance. And I just use greaseproof paper from the kitchen. It's only small pieces, you don't need great big pieces of tracing paper. Same with the heel here, so I just traced off my size 38-39, added my 1 centimetre seam allowance, and don't forget to put these notch marks on here for where you're going to leave your heel open. So this side here, this curved up side with the opening on the back, is where you are going to stitch your upper to your heel. So this is where your foot goes in, and this is your sole at the bottom here. So if you want, you can make a note there if you like. This is the centre back line, so you can trace that on there as well. You can even write your size on, just so that if you're making a few different patterns, you know which is which. So there is my 2 pattern pieces now cut out. So I've just marked on there the size, inside and outside. I've got my notch markings there, centre front line, and on the back I've got my centre back line, notch markings for my opening, and I've written the size on there as well. So you've got your 2 pieces that will sit, when we cut out the fabric, they will sit like this, and then this will bend round and this will curve round to make your shoes. There's one more little pattern piece that I like to add, which is the reinforcement on the heel area here. Just zoomed you in a bit so you can see what I'm up to. So I'm going to just stick my pattern piece down so it doesn't move about. And then we want to just create this sort of semicircle that we can put on the heel that's going to reinforce that area. Start about 5 or 6 centimetres, let's say 5.5, out either side and make a little mark. And then we want this to come sort of just below the top there. So there's my seam allowance. So that's my stitch line. So I don't want to go right up to the stitch line. I want to come down about 0.5 centimetre and then just draw a curve there. And if you find it difficult to draw a curve, then you can use a French curve, or you can use the what I like using is the side of the children's IKEA mugs and plates and things, because they're small. So you could use a glass or a mug to get your curve. It's not, it doesn't have to be like the best drawing you've ever done in the world, but you just essentially want to draw in that heel reinforcement area there. So once you've done that, I've just put paper under there so you can see it a bit more clearly. Then just grab a bit of either tracing paper, greaseproof paper. I've got some dot and cross pattern paper here, and just trace that semicircle shape off. This doesn't have to be like rocket science. Whoop. And that's going to come down there. There's my centre back seam. I'll put that on as well. There you go. Should have used a ruler, but there we are. So essentially that's now going to be your reinforced heel pattern there. So in fact we could fold that on that centre back line and cut that pattern piece out so that it's symmetrical. So like I say, it's just that you want to create a nice semicircle of foam that can sit at the back of your heel, and it's easier to have a pattern rather than to freestyle cut that out. So there's my 3 pattern pieces there. We're going to cut out the fabric now. So here's my piece of fabric. It's a 30 centimetre strip of quilter's cotton. It's 110 wide, and I'm making a size 38 or a size 5, and actually that will just fit next to each other there. I have given you extra fabric because obviously the bigger sizes you may want to cut sort of more like this to allow for the larger sizes. Also, this is quite a nice all over print. Some of the prints are a little bit more linear, or have a pattern that you may want to think about where you cut out. So for example, you're making the elephants, if I get those to show you. I'll move my sunflowers just to one side for now. If you're making the elephants, for example, which I know these were extremely popular, then you may want to, rather than cutting out on the fold, you may want to cut out on a single layer. And you probably want to think about which way your elephants are going. So these elephants are facing in. You've got sort of 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. They're sort of facing, some elephants are facing this way, some are facing this way. They're all obviously this way up. So you just want to think, well, if that's my toe, do I want my elephants to be the right way up as if somebody was stood opposite me looking at me, or the right way up as I'm looking down? I think probably the right way up as somebody, you know, if you had the shoes in front of you like this, then I'm imagining that you pretty much want your elephants to be with their feet here and their heads here. So just have a think about which way round you want to cut out. So I probably cut mine out this way so that my elephants were all facing the right way. And then you also might want to think about which elephants you want. So if this little guy here is your favourite, then you might want to line him up sort of at the centre front there, and you've got your nice little rows of elephants. So you can just kind of figure out which colours you want to predominate and where you want to cut that out. And then obviously you're cutting a pair, so do you want the pair to both have the same? Do you want to sort of choose your elephant and have, well, that's going to be my elephant there, and then when I flip this over and cut my other one, I'm going to have her there so that it's sort of the same pattern? Do you want them facing in? Just have a little think before you cut out. Also, you know, you want them, because this is linear, you want them to line up. So you might want to think, okay, well, I want the toes of this elephant to be at the feet of this elephant to be either side of the toe there, so that when I cut out the next one, I kind of make sure it's the same so that the lines match up. So if you're doing something with the elephant, same with the heel piece, you might want to just think, okay, I want that centre back line, I want a little elephant dude to sit there exactly over that centre back line. So when you're cutting out, it's just worth kind of having a look and cutting. If you're using a very you know, specific pattern like the elephants there, you might want to think about how you cut that out. And then the same with the tigers here, you might want to just make sure when you're cutting out, if you wanted to have like a tiger on one toe and then a panda on the other, how, you know, you might want to think how you cut that out. You might like to do it completely random with this pattern and just see what comes through. But, you know, if you've got some favourite elements within the pattern, just have a think about how you're cutting it out to make the most of it. Now with all the other patterns, they are a bit more all over, so we can just cut it out. However, you might want to think, if you've got the sunflowers, oh, I want the bumblebee to be on my visible on my foot, so you could cut it out so that you've definitely got a little bumblebee there. And with this one, I'm just going to go for it and cut them out. The only thing I would say is this does have a right and wrong way up. So obviously this is the right way up. The bumblebee's heads are all at the top and their little tails are at the bottom. The sunflowers are all growing in an upward direction. So I do want this, you know, I do have to think about making sure that I cut it the right way up. So I would want to cut this way up, so that this is my toe, this is my foot here, and the sunflowers are growing up this way. So if someone's looking at me, or if I'm looking at my pair of shoes, they're looking the right way up. And then same with this. So this is the heel, this is my foot. So this is where the sole of the shoe is. And this is, so I might also want to think about making sure that I cut that sort of so that it is the right way up, bottom top, print going up this way. Now, before we cut out, having said all of that, I'm going to block fuse. So what block fusing is that you fuse the area of fabric first and then you cut out. This, with a smaller pattern piece, is really nice because it gives you a nice crisp area to work with. So when you cut your line out, you're cutting through your interfacing and your fabric at the same time. Stabilises it, and it just means that you don't have to faff about matching up your fusing with your pattern piece. So I'm just using this area of the fabric here. So I'll cut that off and then I'll fuse it. So my pattern pieces will fit on like this. I'll keep this extra piece of fabric at the end here because that will be used in a minute to make my carry bag. And then I'll cut 2 pieces of interfacing and just block fuse both of those bits of fabric. The interfacing is also 30 centimetres wide, so you should find that's enough. You do need to use up a little more interfacing with this, but then you probably, you know, would waste a little bit anyway if you cut it out separately. So I just think this gives you a better result. So if you're ever making a small pocket on something, or children's wear, something with smaller pieces, it is quite good to kind of block fuse and then cut out. It's easier. And you might want to put down a pressing cloth or something to protect your ironing board. And then I will just put it on a medium setting first. You don't want to burn or shrivel up your interfacing, so I'm on sort of a medium. It was a bit hot to begin with, so I've just turned it down. And you just need to press and hold your iron for 7 seconds on each area. So the first thing to do is to go ahead, work out your lay plan, work out which bit you're using, and then the bit of the fabric that you're cutting out you can block fuse. And you might want to just block fuse the whole entire piece of fabric. And obviously it goes without saying that I'm on the reverse side, so this is the wrong side, that's the right side of the fabric. I'm interfacing on the wrong side of the fabric, and the gluey side of the interfacing is the bit that has the rough sort of gluey texture. The right side is a bit softer. So when I lay that out, I can match my selvages there, because I do want to be on grain, even though it's a very small thing and it's all been fused. So I want to put my toes this way, so that it's the right side up. So here's my toe, here's my foot, so it's looking the right way. Here's my sole, here's my sort of where my ankle will be, so that's the right way as well. I'm just thinking about, I quite like him, I quite like that little bee there as well. And maybe, you know, trying to reduce waste, so I've got a bit of extra spare there. I might just lay those out like that. I've got a nice big sunflower on my heel there, which looks quite nice too. Might just have that offset from the centre. So then what I can do is just measure out from the selvage to my grain line there. I can see that straight. Especially if you've got a print, you want to make sure that you're on the straight grain as well, so that it all looks nice. So I'm cutting through both layers. I can just pin my greaseproof paper pattern through both layers of fabric. Obviously it is a little bit stiffer because I've interfaced it already, but that almost makes it easier. Let's measure my straight grain here. And remember that you do want a pair, so the outside and the inside is ever so slightly different. So when you're cutting out 2 layers of fabric, make sure that they're sort of wrong sides together or right sides together, so that you're not getting 2 identical pieces. You want to kind of create 2 that are a mirror image of each other, just like if you were, you know, with any other garment making that you might do. And then we can just cut this out. So the smaller the pattern pieces, the more accurate you have to be with your cutting out. So, you know, do kind of try to pin it nicely and cut out there at the edge of your pattern, because you've drawn your seam allowance on already. And then I want to just snip a little notchy here and here, where the edge of my opening will be. I'll put one at the centre back as well, one at the centre front, just to help me match up. Helps to have some reference points sometimes. It's a very, very summery, joyful pattern, these sunflowers. Once again, I shall just notch the areas that I want to leave open. Dip and dip. Centre front of the toe, and that's our main pieces cut out. Next up, we'll do exactly the same thing with our toe piece, our lining pieces. I'll just give that a little iron first of all. So I have not interfaced the lining, I'm only interfacing one layer. And this pattern is an all over pattern. It doesn't matter which direction it goes in. It's kind of a bit of an all about, roundabout pattern. So I'm just going to measure from the selvage to the centre front there. And I'll just pin in place and cut out those. So I'm just cutting this on the fold. So once again, you will cut out 2 of each. So you'll end up with 8 pieces in total once you've cut out your shoe pieces. So once again, just cut those notches. Okay, so lastly you want to cut out 2 of your heel pieces. So you can just probably just pop a couple of pins in. It's a bit fiddly because it's wodgy. There we go. Cut out one at a time. There's no way you can cut this foam on the fold, so just cut out one at a time. These are symmetrical, so it doesn't matter how you do it, which way around you go. I'm just being economical with my foam. That's everything cut out, so let's lay it all out how it's going to work together. So you've got your lining for your toes. They're going to sit together with your uppers that have already been interfaced. Then you've got your heel, and you've got your lining for your heel. Two of those, and that will sit with your upper fabric for your heels. And then you've got your foam, which will in fact sit sort of sandwiched between there like that. So that's everything cut out.